I grind for the love of the game. We be running while y'all are walking. We grind for the love of the game. That ain't a lump of coal. That's a fresh PTJ drop in your stocking.
Loving it. Loving the Christmas themed intro too. This is as topical as it gets here. And a shout out credit to a longtime listener, Paul Bors, on getting us the sweet new intro music this week too. Kind of classing this up for the new year for us.
Oh, I appreciate you coming up with that idea, just reaching out to Natron. So shout out to you. I look forward to meeting you one day. I'm sure you're awesome, very handsome.
Absolutely.
I could see that. So yeah,
Yeah.
welcome you guys. Welcome. Happy holidays. Welcome back to Projecting the Jump. And thank you to all you fantasy hoop heads for grinding this out this time of year. There's a lot going on. It's a very overstimulating time for us all. Very exciting time. With our families, doing holiday stuff. If you play fantasy football and you're in multiple fantasy semifinals right now, it's just a crazy time. It's a really fun time. So I've been really distracted, and it's been nice to kind of zone into some of these topics. And there's a part of me, because fantasy basketball is like my first love. Fantasy football, I feel like I've had a better time making money at. And once fantasy football ends, I feel like I can really sink my teeth in. So I'm getting kind of excited. I know for you, Nate, harvest is that for you. For me, it's fantasy football. I can't quit fantasy football. I do love it too much, but there's something to be said for when I can just focus on hoops. So that time is coming. I'm excited about that.
It is amazing when you actually have the bandwidth to pay attention to something, and you're like, all right, if I would have been doing this all year, but you make up for time when you can, and this is a great time to do it. And for a lot of people, the casual fans out there, and I know there's probably some casual fantasy basketball fans too. I mean, the start of the NBA calendar really starts, on Christmas in a lot of people's minds. So I'm sure there's some people out there that are just dusting the cobwebs off their team and checking to see, am I still in contention? So it is a great time to do that.
The antlers are really working for me. It's nice when you're making a point and I see those things just above your head. So please check out the YouTube feed if you guys are listening on the audio, just so you can get a load of Nate and you can see me wrapped in tinsel. And shout out to Pat of Pat's Place Art Studio here. I'm sorry I had to desecrate some of your chihuahuas. We'll get that back the way it was. So today we come to you with a kind of a holiday themed way to go through some what Nate likes to call fantasy gripes. I mean, just some things that we want to take a look at that we wish could be different and maybe present some ways that could be different. So this is a fantasy hoops Christmas wish list. It's basically stylized gripes. So Nate, since this was your idea first, just kind of give the listener a little idea of like what this topic means to you, and then kick us off.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's wishes if we had the magic wand out there and could make coaching rotation changes. We can make roster modifications or give certain players attributes that we feel like they have in them. It's kind of those things, just kind of things that we'd hope to see for the rest of this year. With that in mind, like leading it off, all I want for Christmas is a little bit more roster clarity from the Atlanta Hawks, and specifically I'm looking for a consolidation trade. The Atlanta Hawks have been great for fantasy. They have 8 really high quality rosterable guys. You have 3 studs, Trey, DeJounte, and Capella, who's somehow the 41st ranked player in the league, even though we've all buried him for dead 4 years in a row. And then they have 5 other guys that are really in that good category. And so I guess what I would love to see, just from a strictly fantasy element of it, not that it would be necessarily good for maybe it would be good for their actual real life, is ship off 1 or 2, like 2 or 3 of these guys and kind of go all in on somebody and let's see what happens with a little bit more minutes for a few of these guys. And I'll be curious. I'm going to run through the 5 guys that I'm most interested in seeing and kind of looking at and curious to get your take on if which one of those guys has the most appeal for you, or you would are the most interested in. Starting with our double O, Neka Konwu. He's constantly the fantasy tease out there, crushing it in small minutes. You know, we've seen a couple starts from him
with
last week,
with
actually.
Capella.
Yeah, I was like, where did this come from all of a
Very
sudden?
exciting. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like the biggest one is like, this he's averaging 24 minutes a night. I just would love to see him with a real 30 minutes a night, 34 minutes a night, because I think, you're looking at top 25 guy there. The next one, Sadiq Bey, who's been killing it over the last couple of weeks because of injuries that have kind of opened up some extra minutes. He's averaging 15 and 7 with 2 threes and a steal through the month of December. So he's been doing great.
Can I ask you a quick question on Bay? I'm curious. I know you've rostered him all year. You probably paid more attention. I've always kind of viewed him as a bit of a chucker. That role in Detroit that he had, I think he was a little in over his skis. I think that, you don't want him as your second or third highest usage player. I love him in this role in Atlanta. Do you see him as a guy that on a team like the Hawks, which is a fairly healthy culture, as the third or fourth option could be a 20-point per game player? Or do you like him as a role player as he is now, just for an NBA fit?
Oh no, I think he should be your fifth starter,
me too.
if not bench guy. I mean, he's strictly him and Michael Beasley. I don't know if I see a difference between the two of them, frankly. They're both spacers, and they do a good job at that. The other guy, which I was shocked at doing this research a little bit. So Bogdanovich, what do you think his season rank is right now?
He's been in and out of the lineup a lot, so just per game value.
Average. So average for the season, yeah.
88.
That's what I would have thought too. 32nd. He's the 32nd ranked player in fantasy.
Per game value?
Yeah, which in 28 minutes. So that's another one of those. I'm like, all right, what happens if he gets up to 33? Then are you all of a sudden looking at this like stud? Or maybe not. Maybe he's one of those guys that strictly just excels in a bench role and then it gets diminished as a starter.
Or he gets hurt. If you play him 34 minutes a night for 2 months, judging from his track record, probably gets hurt.
Overextend it. Yeah.
But when you look at it, it's tantalizing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those mind-boggling things. A bench guy is 32nd.
Mm-hmm.
The last two would be your boy, DeAndre Hunter. It wasn't that long ago. He was the number 4th overall pick in fantasy. And he's the 70th ranked, fourth ranked player, or 4th drafted guy in real life, but he's the 70th ranked player over the last month. So he's been really solid. I'm just curious. I would love to see like him in this high usage role. Like, I feel like that's kind of the one thing we've never seen from him. Maybe that would flame out spectacularly, and there's a reason the Hawks haven't done it. Or maybe he's going to be kind of one of these guys that blossoms if he was given the minutes.
I would lean towards as the reason the Hawks haven't done it. I just want to add context for the listener. So Nate calling DeAndre Hunter my boy is funny because he is one of these guys I tend to stay away from. I had a last second rule out a player on my team. I just needed to get a game in. I barely squeaked out a win today, a win I did not deserve. And DeAndre Hunter, had 11 points and 3 rebounds. I texted Nate that night, and I was like, it was late. It was like 1:30, and last thing I thought of before I bed, I was just like, I feel like sick to my stomach that I picked up DeAndre Hunter. Like, I'm ashamed of myself. I know better. And then of course he gets ruled out. I'm out of games. I have to drop him. The
worst. It's literally the worst thing in fantasy is when your streamer doesn't play. There's nothing worse than that. When you waste. You're like, I could have picked anybody. I didn't really even feel that strongly about him.
Exactly. Hunter is one of these players that like you have to remind yourself you're not picking up the last game's box score. Because I looked at that last box score and I was like, oh, I want that. You're not going to get that. You're going to get 11 and 3.
Yeah, it's hard to do when you see that previous results. You're like, oh, maybe he's turning the corner. And the last guy, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, is he's set to return, Jalen Johnson, who's been one of the season's breakouts. He's the 49th ranked player as far as average on the season, 3rd-year guy. I guess I'm curious to hear what you think. Do you think we're seeing a breakout? I mean, he's a young guy. The opportunity's there. The size is there. This is real. He's turned the corner. Or are we seeing a guy who's just been small sample size early season. He's shooting 43% from three, 59% from the field in general with a block and a steal. Is this just kind of small sample size? We're going to see some regression. What do you think on him? Is it sell high or buy low?
I think fantasy wise, he is the total package. He's not just a sprinkle of stats guy. He's a guy that can, the outline of this guy is 1.5 threes, blocks, and steals. I think there's a high upside player in fantasy. And I think real life, I think this guy has star potential. I don't know if he has like multiple time all-star potential, but I think he has like all-star snub a few times potential where like people are talking about him. You know what I mean? No, I think Jalen Johnson's a really talented player.
I've never heard that as a ceiling. Like,
yeah,
your best day might be the day that you get an honorable mention from a Zach Lowe article.
He's like modern wing Derek Harper or Rod Strickland. Like, you're not going to be an all-star, but we'll discuss you. Local sports radio will be angry for a few days. Right. No, I really like Jalen Johnson. Definitely check your waiver wire if he's available. If somebody just doesn't have room, they had to drop him, swoop him as soon as you can. If you have.
You have a crazy league in that case. Yeah.
He actually is on the waiver wire in my points league, and I don't have room to pick him up. So yeah, if you're listening in Rose Garden Revival, what are you doing? Pick up Jalen Johnson and drop Joe Harris, or whoever you're holding on to there. Make sure. But yeah, I think he's a pretty talented player. He's the one out of all these guys that I think in an elevated role could produce top 40 fantasy numbers for sure. And we might see it second half of the year.
Yeah, especially once they trade away to do a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 on get a Siakam or something in there.
I gotta ask you before we pivot off this topic, where are you at on? Because all of fantasy was like erupting. I feel like everyone was very excited the first time the Capella Okongwu lineup came out. It's produced nice results as far as their production. Do you think that they're just messing around, or do you think this is something we could see for the rest of the year? And do you like it as a fit for fantasy, and also just does it make sense from a team construction? Because Okongwu can shoot, he can stretch the floor, but what do you think of it?
Yeah, it seemed like they did it as a just a matchup specific. I mean, they rolled it out the first time versus the Raptors, I believe. And so they were looking to go. They were timing it, for teams that were a little bit bigger to get a little bit extra size in there. What was interesting is when Okongwu moved into the starting lineup, or when he's been on his minutes alongside Capella, I've been noticing that he's ceded like alpha rebounding to Capella. Mm-hmm. So his rebounds are actually down when he's playing a lot with Capella. So his numbers on a per game basis aren't as good. So I think that it wouldn't be incredibly strong for fantasy if that was the case. I think really the best case scenario is that they decide to move on from Capella rather than start him side by side. I think if he just moves into starting lineup alongside, I don't think you're going to see a giant jump up of value. In fact, if that's the case, I might consider selling high on Okongwu at that point, even though I'm a huge believer in him.
3 out of his last 5 games, he's played 30 plus minutes. That's really nice. Yeah, the scoring's up. Last 2 weeks, you're getting 13 points, 7 rebounds, a little over a block, a 3. Of course, his amazing percentages. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. But I think we're ready to see Okongwu in that full time center role, hopefully.
Yeah. What's on your Christmas list?
Well, it's funny because I actually listened last year. We stylized this pod as New Year's resolutions because we did it just after the New Year. And my first topic, I guess it's a tradition, the second annual kicking off my list with complaining about the Charlotte Hornets. I can't wait. So yeah, this fantasy hoopsmiths, I just wish for more transparency on NBA injury reports in general, because some teams like the Hornets are offering up lumps of coal all season long. So this wasn't the player I expected to talk about first, but when I started tracking it, I was just like, my mind was blown. So until today, Cody Martin had yet to play this entire season. No timetable had ever been offered for his return from a knee injury he sustained last November. Mm-hmm. When they originally, after the injury occurred and he had surgery, they announced he would be out for at least 4 weeks after arthroscopic knee surgery. So it's almost like they're trolling. It's like, okay, it's going to be more.
He's the new Lonzo Ball.
Right. Well, I mean, what's the point of saying 4 weeks after arthroscopic knee surgery? So that 4 weeks turned into over a year. And so yesterday, randomly, after no updates, he pops up as questionable after a full calendar year of no updates. And then out of nowhere today, Saturday the 23rd, he plays 17 minutes. No word of a ramp up, nothing. Like, is this like next level like espionage stuff? Like I'm just not sure. It's just Cody Martin. I don't know what kind of competitive advantage they think they're getting here. But it's a joke. It's insane. Everybody knows this one, I'm sure. LaMelo Ball, he sustained an ankle injury November 26, and has simply been ruled out indefinitely. Now that happens. I think this one is easier to read the tea leaves on this one. However, no semblance of a timeline given at all. So that's that. Usual Hornets, crap. So then Mark Williams, and this one's very near and dear to my heart. He was out December 6th. Then he played 20 minutes on the 8th of December and has been doubtful ever since, being ruled out game by game with a lower back contusion. And so I'd already picked out this topic. I'm getting ready, and then I'm scrolling Twitter today, and I see Josh Lloyd tweet out that Mark Williams today missed his 7th game in a row with a doubtful tag, which I didn't know this. I didn't know there's a number to it. The doubtful tag apparently is supposed to mean a 25% chance of playing. So basically, either they're lying or a 0.01 probability has come true, and it's the Charlotte Hornets. So I think it's safe to say that they're lying, or their medical staff is just clueless. So like with this franchise, day to day, it can mean week to week, it can mean month to month, it can mean year to year. So all I want for Christmas is a timetable or two. Am I out of line? Like what is wrong with this franchise? Why is this okay? Like, can you help me?
I feel like you didn't even touch on my favorite Hornets, which is that I have like I can't keep myself from rostering Gordon Hayward.
I left it for you.
I always draft him, and he's forever. And I just let him go on my roster the other week because I ran into this at all times. It would just constantly be like he basically was probable all season, or he would sit out 2 games without notice.
It means nothing.
It means nothing. It was really hard to read, and it was hard to build a thing around. And so it is a tough part about fantasy. And luckily, I'm glad that Yahoo has added the IR Plus. That was a really big change that they made a couple of years ago that really changed for the better fantasy basketball, where you didn't have to wait for a guy to be out 3 games to then put him in your IR spot. So credit to Yahoo for finally doing that. But it is it feels a little Belichickian the way that they're pulling it, but it's not with Tom Brady-esque results.
Right. They don't have the cachet to be this obnoxious. And I don't know why the NBA doesn't call them out on it. But in general, it's like the larger gripe here is there's just not a lot of transparency with NBA injury reports. People will pop up with the most random thing and be ruled out. It's the wild west this season. And so for actionable fantasy advice, I don't know if you have any. I guess in particular, just be very wary of Charlotte Hornets in general. I mean, drafting LaMelo Ball has not bared any fruit for years because the guy, his chronic ankle injuries, so always something. And I guess, Nate, you've always been very extreme on this end, and I'm trying to get better at it. Especially if you have a limited amount of moves, make that pickup as close to tip off as possible, because these rollouts are killers this season.
Yeah. I feel like you miss out on the prime streamer of the day, but the sting of picking up a guy who sits at the end. We had a guy in our league who picked up S. Merrill,
Sam Merrill,
who then didn't bear any fruit this week, but that's neither here nor there. But I've decided that is it's better for my mental sanity. I don't know if it's more of the winning strategy, but I feel a lot better about it, at least.
I would say, and this is an important distinction, as you mentioned, you'll miss the pickup of the day. There's pickups, there's like must roster players that need to be snatched, and then there's a player just trying to get some sets and you're just streaming them in. So if it's a streamer and it's really close between a few guys, try to wait as long as you can. If there's a hot player that everyone's going to be after, of course, smash that button.
Good point. Yeah, long-term pickup versus short-term pickup. Short-term pickup, you're rolling the dice anyway.
Exactly. All right, well, I don't want to make people listen to me bitch about the Charlotte Hornets for much longer, because I'm sure everybody's already felt those feelings himself at some point. If those things,
Well, they also checked out when we said Hornets, apparently.
they did, they checked out. All right, so what is next on your fantasy hoops miss wish list, Nate?
Well, I'll tell you, all I want for Christmas, Jamie, is a brand new guitar. And where the best spot to get this?
Don't.
We're excited as at PTJ we have a new guitar sponsorship actually. So grab your phone. Hang on, we'll wait a second. We know you got the phone in the pocket. All right, you grab it. All right, yeah. So head over to winslowguitars.com. These are like really beautiful guitars. They're handmade. Every guitar is completely unique, made from locally sourced wood. So this is not a mass replicated thing. It's a really cool partnership that we're excited to have. And really what's neat about it is, and I know you have the phone in your hand now, so you're scrolling, checking it out. A lot of these are like oak burl guitars or mandolins, but they're all handmade. And what's neat is that rather than a regular guitar where you might just, after playing it, slide it into your bed, kind of to get out of the way. These are really gorgeous. They're works of art. So you would throw them up on your wall. And so it's something you can enjoy 365. It's more of a showpiece for a room. And it's actually surprisingly affordable too. If you're on there, send them a message. You can get a custom made guitar for a lot less than you might think, and tell them the guys from PTJ sent you, and also check out those $30. Have you seen these $30 handmade? You know what I'm about to say?
Kazoos, baby.
Yeah, those are pretty sweet.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if you're not in the market for a Winslow guitar, you might be in the market for a Winslow kazoo. These things are beautiful, and many men walking down the street in Portland, Oregon, might have one in their pocket right now.
Yeah. If his shop online is not up to date, he's probably just in his wood shop. So just send him an email. He's refreshing them, making them all the time. So order one of those. They make a pretty good present though. But that's winslowguitars.com. But the real thing on my wish list here is, and I've been kind of excited to see is. I'm hoping that they don't put Kobe White back in the bottle. Keep him out.
They're not going to.
That's exciting to see. I love it.
Yeah. They're not going to, are they?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's going that way. Kobe White's one of these guys, and I'm curious to hear if you have some people like this. But there's been a couple guys in the draft that I've been like so high on. Nobody's I've ever been higher on than. And Corey Brewer out of Florida. I thought he was going to be all NBA. I mean, I thought he was going to be a complete stud. But Kobe White, I was also really big on. I loved his 6'5" point guard, great handle shooting,
big hair.
The big hair, yeah, right. After our first couple seasons, I was like, oh, we've seen the big hair effect. Like he's not that good. Like, and yeah, so he was really poor for the first couple seasons. The game looked like he was going too fast. The game looked like it was going too fast. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's putting it all together. Yeah. And so I guess, first off, I want to ask you, are we seeing just an opportunity and just a hot streak? He's absolutely lighting it. And in December, he's averaging 26, 7, and 7 with 4.6 threes. I mean, that's Curry numbers. Are we seeing just a hot streak, or are we seeing him putting it together?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think we've definitely seen a player hitting a stride. I believe Kobe White's 24 or 25. It's not very old. And with Zach LaVine being out, he's clearly stepped into a role that he's only had in chunks in the past, and he was ready for it this time. I think he's an incredibly talented player. But the Bulls have been frisky lately, actually. Just very, very recent history. But I don't know what his ceiling is long term as like a second or third option on a playoff team. But for fantasy basketball, that doesn't matter right now. And I think that he's a tough sell high because he's kind of found money. And if you're going to be able to get a top 30 player back, you just ride it out and hope that it sustains, but you can't move him for like a top 50 player. So it's just one of these like found money waiver wire pickup of the year players that hopefully you picked up early on and just stuck with. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of Kobe White. His love of the game is very infectious and clear. He's just a really positive. He reminds me a little bit of Tyrese Maxey in that way. Just really jubilant in the way that he plays. So I'm a big fan of his game. And yeah, I think that as far as this fantasy season for redraft, you got yourself a steal. And I can't imagine they're not going to move Zach LaVine unless if the asking price is just too high. You can't bring that disgruntled guy back to this team. You just got to let Kobe White cook. So yeah, I think it's here to stay. But it might regress a little bit to something a little more reasonable. So yeah, I do think he's been on a hot streak, but he's still elevated to another level, and I think that's real.
Yeah, yeah, it's been neat to see. I mean, with even that looks pretty real because the rest of their starters are also in. It's not silly season. They're not sitting all their guys. It's everybody but LaVine out there. So it's cool to see. I think keep it coming. Let's keep that genie out of the bottle.
Shout out Kobe White. That's a fun one. So that's a positive one. This next one is positive. It's not a gripe. I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. And actually, shout out to Caden Mildren, a good friend of mine and of the podcast, who actually came on and profiled some players for us going into March Madness next year. And hopefully we can have him on again this year.
Boiler up.
He's already just grinding college basketball right now. So this fantasy hoopsmith, I wish for Jeremy Grant to be traded from the Portland Trailblazers to the Indiana Pacers specifically. So this is so many reasons. It's hard to know where to begin. The timeline, the fit, and really freeing up usage for the Blazers. So let's start on the Blazers side. And of course, I can't wait to get your input on this. Jeremy Grant, man, he's been fantastic this season. They've lost all 4 of the games. So the sample size we're going to be looking at is only 4 games on some of these guys. They've lost all of those games. They're clearly a better team with him on the floor. And they're a fantastic watch right now. I'm having a lot of fun watching them. They play so hard. They play together. And despite some of the inconsistencies of Chauncey Billups, these guys are buying into their roles. So shout out to the Blazers. They're a plucky little team right now. But I think the roles on that team could benefit from Grant's departure. This is a consolidation trade. And this is a fantasy basketball podcast. So this is, what we do. So let's take a look at the usage bump to 3 players in particular. We're going to look at the second-year wing, Shaedon Sharpe, and we're going to look at your rookies over there in Portland, Scoot Henderson, and perhaps the NBA's best-kept secret, one, Toumani Camara. Love him.
Absolutely, 100%.
And you turned me on to him, and I've been watching him closely ever since, so I appreciate that. Okay, so let's take a look at some of their stats. So in 4 games, let's start with Camara. So in the 4 games without Jeremy Grant, he gets a 6-minute bump. His points go from 6.4 to 11.3. His rebounds double from 4 to 8.
Wow.
Yep. His dimes pretty much double. They go from 0.9 to 1.5. And he gets up 5 shots a game with Jeremy Grant playing, and he gets up 12.5 in the 4 without Jeremy Grant.
Oh my Lord.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So
that is interesting.
This one surprised me just because it's a different position, but it's just about usage. And Jeremy Grant likes the ball in his hands. Scoot Henderson. So Scoot in the 4 games without Jeremy Grant, he goes from 25 to 30 minutes a game. He goes from 9.4 points to 15.3. And his dimes go up from 3.8 to 5.8. The rebounds stay the same. And he gets up a lot more field goals. He goes from 9.6 to 15.8.
Wow.
Right. And the other one is interesting is Shaedon Sharpe, and this really shows this is about usage. The minutes stay the same, 35 either way. 16 points a game without Jeremy Grant in the lineup, 20.3 in the 4 games without. The rebounds go up a board a game. The assists go up from 3 to 4.5. The steals come down because he's scoring. They go down from 1 to 0.5. And the field goals go up by about 2 extra field goals a game. Field goal percentage gets a little better with that volume for Shaedon. So just kind of curious if as a Blazers fan, what your take is on this, prioritizing development. Obviously the Jeremy Grant contract is huge. It was meant for a Damian Lillard team. But man, he's played great. So, we'll get into the Indiana piece in a minute, but I'm curious what you think of this now that I've given you those numbers. And had you already kind of considered like these timelines aren't going to mesh? I think Jeremy Grant's 29.
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation was, as soon as Dame left, that it was borrowed time when it comes to Jeremy Grant. I think the or like more of the talk has been is clearing up the guard rotation a little bit, because they really have 4 guards that are good, that need minutes. I shouldn't say are good. Scoot's terrible. But
You have a personal
there's
vendetta against Scoot. People are happy. People are happy with the way he's been playing.
yeah, I mean, I'm not. It's nothing on him long term, but
Right.
when he comes in the game, his like plus minuses are awful, and like
Right.
he clearly just isn't ready to play in the NBA at this particular, or should I say, win in the NBA at this particular moment. But that doesn't mean anything long term yet. But so I think I guess I've always just kind of more focused or thought that they would clear up that guard rotation first, and then keep Jeremy Grant around, because he does kind of elevate their floor a little bit without hurting their draft position too much. I kind of just was assuming that they were going to hang on to him for a year, maybe a year and a half, just because they don't have anybody that's ready fit for that position to kind of take over that usage. So I think I just assumed that they were going to hang on to him for a while, but you're right. I mean, he doesn't fit in on the team. At some point, they're going to move him, and if they think Kamara is ready to, I mean, the stats you just said about Kamara were really eye opening. I mean, the fact that he's shooting that much there was really cool. So I'm not opposed to it. I mean, especially if they get a good value off of it, and I think they should. As far as fantasy goes, would you pick up Kamara if that's if he gets moved that day? I mean, because really it seems like the Chauncey kind of views him and Thibault almost interchangeable, depending on who he thinks is a little bit hotter that day. The last game they played, he thought Thibault had the hot hand. Kamara only played 23 minutes. Thibault played in the 30s. So
right.
I think you would continue to see that a little bit as they keep going for winning. But I love the idea of Kamara being a fancy pickup if that comes up. Yeah, I think you're totally onto something.
And you just can't have Kamara and Thibault on the floor at the same time. So yeah, that's sure they're more correlated than maybe Jeremy Grant. But let me ask you this: would you rather, from a Blazers development perspective, and also just I don't know, this pod I will preface is like maybe a little less fantasy than some of our others. We're just having a good time.
This is not fantasy related.
Exactly. We're talking hoops a little less, or talking hoops today. Would you rather get 18 Chris Murray minutes or 8 Chris Murray minutes for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're prioritizing development, so why not get the extra minutes and see what you get?
So that's the difference.
His brother clearly is the best 3-point shooter in the league
of all time.
Yeah, sorry, of all time.
By the way, I will say, fantasy related, Keegan Murray, if he blows up like that again and you have him, field some offers, man, because like this is just one of these guys. He's going to have these occasional spike games. It's not going to turn into a 2 or 3 week run where he's scoring 30 plus. That was one of the greatest sell high games of all time. And there are some real Keegan Murray believers out. I like him, but I'm just like, he's just one of these guys that he's a classic sell high candidate. You got to find the right spot and move him. That's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, like for sure, he's top 15 rest of the season, but just barely.
Oh my god, he might be on Natron's team.
No, so that's a good call. That's a good call.
Let's take a look real quick. So on the Pacer side, I haven't really crunched the trade machine on this, but just imagine Jeremy Grant in that offense in the Obi Toppin role. Are we talking top 30 the rest of the season? Like that would be beautiful, just in the open court, just with his skill set. And they have, it's crazy because think of all the points they score, and then think Tyrese Halliburton is the only but Tyrese and Miles Turner are the only super fantasy relevant pieces. Everyone else is kind of on the fringes. So they could handle to have a third guy in there. And Jeremy Grant, I think, is perfect to complement their skill sets. I just literally, that really clicked for me. So I love that one. I think if the Pacers can go out and get a Jeremy Grant, I guess OG Anunoby would fit too, but I prefer Jeremy Grant because I like that he can really create his own shot. So I think that would take a little, Hallie occasionally might want someone to do that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And we haven't seen Indiana kind of shown a willingness to trade their first round picks in a long time, but maybe what they've seen from the play-in run and everything like that would encourage them to do it. And whatever we can do to be able to watch more Pacer games, show us more Pacer games.
Right.
This is awesome. Like, let's keep watching Pacer games.
No doubt, no doubt. I will say that my buddy who threw this trade out there wanted to see Jarris Walker come back to the Blazers and a bunch of picks.
Yeah, that's I mean, he's the obvious guy that would come back this way, but
which would be fun.
Yeah, so let's see here. Moving on to my next Christmas wish here, and this is one I think we're going to be on alignment with, and that is, and I'm not quite sure how it would work, but okay. I just want to see more minutes for Tari Easton.
We have overlap today, Natron.
Oh, do we really? Okay, nice.
We do, but mine is going to be presented through a different prism, but we'll get to that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Tari Easton, he's a second-year player, still super raw when you watch him at LSU. Especially on the offensive end, he's still kind of figuring out, is he a stretch guy? Is he a rim runner? They're kind of, he's figuring that out at this point. But you absolutely love what you see on the defensive end. And what you see on the defensive end is in 21 minutes a game, he's getting 0.9, he's getting a steal and a block in 21 minutes a night.
Which is criminal. The 21 minutes is criminal. Gotta figure it out.
I'm not quite sure where those minutes come from, really. I mean, they have such a deep roster. And so it is ironic because the Rockets are kind of middling, but I think on a lot of other teams, especially teams that weren't prioritizing wins, or just kind of their positioning quite so hard, would find a little bit more developmental minutes for him, for a second-year guy that's shown so much promise. So I know
where those minutes should come from.
Oh, let's hear where those minutes come from.
I think they should be coming from Dillon Brooks.
All right.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Christmas pod, and there's no point of us just getting heated and coming to like verbal blows over this. We're trying to keep this cordial. Listeners are coming. They're celebrating Christmas. They're happy. They don't want to hear us just shouting obscenities at each other.
My fantasy hoopsmith wish is for Dillon Brooks and his 31 minutes per game to go away. From the Rockets crowded young wing rotation.
How do I end this pod? I'm pressing this button. It's just not working.
And it's I'm not saying he's not playing well for the team, and the Udoka effect, they want to be a play-in team. I get it. But to have that guy playing 31 minutes where there's no ceiling on that man, Tari Eason could be a star having 21 minutes a game. I think it's criminal. I think it's silly. I think that those minutes should be reversed.
I'm sorry. You think that their best path towards winning is not playing their best perimeter defender?
Why are they in such a hurry to win? What's the point? They got Cam Whitmore and Amen Thompson just sitting there, just getting, ass burn on the bench, picking splinters up. Picking holiday.
And then Thompson gets injured just taking his warm-ups off, apparently.
This all comes back to you defending your boy Dillon Brooks. They got a lot of talent underneath Dillon Brooks, and it's just interesting because if they took a more traditional path towards rebuilding instead of paying Fred VanVleet all this money, I'm flirting around with Brooke Lopez. Then we wouldn't be talking about this. We'd be, talking about Cam Whitmore as a potential pickup in 20 minutes a game, depending on how the rotation was shaken out. Instead, he's getting 7.7 minutes and has played 6 games. And so this isn't an indictment on Dillon Brooks. This is just like, what are the Rockets doing? I just think see what you got with this talent before you bring in a veteran like Dillon Brooks, who really just fills a role for a team who's ready for the playoffs. And have fun getting walloped in the play-in, I guess.
You're totally right. I mean, it is they're operating like a team that's trying to win it all, despite the fact they're 11-9,
which is cool. It's they are playing good ball. Duck is a good coach, but it's just the timeline is ahead of itself.
True. Yeah. It was kind of interesting. Right as I was jotting this down, it kind of it led to this little just a little micro segue, and it kind of got me thinking. I was like, okay, I feel like we might have to dedicate a whole pod to this topic, not Dillon Brooks, although we could. I would be interested, but is because Tari Easton, he's averaging a steal and a block a game in those short minutes, but it's kind of like, this would be the segment for the pod, would be my favorite streamer in a category league. So it's a Sunday. My favorite streamer to win X category is,
nice.
because a lot of times on a Sunday you're like, I have these five, they have these four categories locked up. This guy's got these three categories locked up. All I care about is blocks, or all I care about is threes and field goal percentage. And it'd be fun to kind of investigate that, because Tari Eason's rapidly becoming one of those guys that are like, all right, I just need, like, if I can get 2 steals, I'm going to win this week. Like, do I pick up this guy? And so that's something that's really, I'm excited to keep my eye on him, because if those 21 minutes become 25, then all of a sudden you got yourself a really good player.
I love this one. It's fun. I'm glad that was a very cold, unexpected, but like cordial Dylan Brooks fight, because like we both agree that the Rockets have gotten ahead of themselves with how they're treating this rebuild, right? So we both agree on that.
Yeah, true.
Which is no fun.
I mean, my DraftKings account says differently, but I agree with you on a personal level.
And I will also just actionable advice: if you can hold on to Tari Eason, I think he was back today. He played 20 minutes. Just hold on to him. Hold on for dear life. I dropped him this week in a dogfight in one spot and held on in another. So I would definitely be holding on to him. So yeah, let's just make sure we get all the meat off the bones of the Rockets one, because one of mine was the Dylan Brooks thing. So yeah, this team just has too many guys. I think we kind of covered it. I guess Amin Thompson, the jury's still out on the role for him because he's only played 7 games, but is 15 minutes per game enough for the 4th overall pick, Nate?
Well, he hasn't been healthy. That's been really the bummer, is that, like, we haven't even seen 15 minutes a night for 20 games. I mean, we're seeing it, and I mean, I don't even know how many games he's played, but
7.
it's 7. Yeah. It's just really a shame, because, all the pre-draft talk was that he was going to be, it depends on who you listen to, but he looked a little bit more advanced than his brother. And then we've seen his brother clearly be a fantasy staple at this point. So I feel like everybody's just curious to see what they have with him. Even if they're just letting him loose as basically the Pistons version of that, just a defensive player. Right. It's a shame that we haven't seen that. And hopefully we do see that the rest of the way.
No doubt. Yeah, the most he's played this season is 21 minutes against the Magic on the 25th of October. Oh, he played 22 against the Mavericks just the 22nd of December. But yeah, that's the threshold he's been able to get to. All right, go ahead and hit me with your next name.
All right. My next thing I'm wishing for is, and I feel like this is a segue here. I'm gonna flip flop my order a little bit, just because we were talking about Amin Thompson. I want to talk about the Pistons now at this point. And first off, I do have to admit, I've been in a pretty rough headspace the last 24 hours here, and it was hard for me to get amped up for this podcast, and I got to share with you why. And that is, so about 6 weeks ago, I go out golfing with a bunch of buddies on Christmas Eve every day, and we do gifts. And so 6 weeks ago, I ordered a whole bunch of Pistons Rasheed Wallace Ball Don't Lie socks. For all the guys, like everybody comes, they're all gonna get a Piston sock. And then some mother effer swiped them from my porch this week when they got delivered.
Thank you for censoring yourself. Or maybe if you didn't have to run in the hard streets of West Salem, you wouldn't get your socks stolen off your porch.
Yeah. So I'm in the spot where I'm trying to mentally support the Pistons. And the universe will just not. The universe is so anti-Piston right now. Like I don't know what the Pistons did. Like, they can't win a game, and they can't even get like socks delivered to my house. This is a really tough time for the Pistons franchise, and this is it's a tough time for my buddies too. Like, they're just learning about this now. Like, I haven't even told them about.
I'm sorry about your socks, man.
Yeah, it's sad. Tough time for the Pistons. And so really my wish is for the Pistons is the smallest wish I can even think of is, like, let's get Jalen Duren back in there. At least give him a chance. Jalen Duren has only played in 14 games, but when he plays, at least they resemble a team. He gives them some vertical spacing. He gives them defense, and he's actually they're third best as far as plus minus on the entire team.
He's a
Care
stud.
to guess who 1 and 2 are?
Yes, I can. I love this game. It's definitely not okay. Is Ivy in there?
Ivy's number 2. Nice
I
guess.
thought he might be.
Wow.
Thought he might be.
Yeah.
It's definitely not Cade.
It's not Cade. No.
No.
He's not bad.
Asar Thompson.
Asar. Wow, you just crushed it. 1 and 2. Easy.
Let's go.
That's why people listen to the pod, because for this kind of expertise. Look at
It's
that.
I was like,
listen to that man.
Well,
Listen to that man.
We'll get. I have a deep dive Pistons gripe myself, so I've been plugged into Pistons hatred just like you have.
Yeah. So it's just to finish this one out. It's it's really I guess I would love to see him, because I think we want to see a more competent team. We want to turn some of these just terrible blowouts into more competitive games. That's just a win for everybody involved. It's a win for all the Pistons players that you're rostering. It's an advantage for the team that's playing them, because right now whoever's playing them their players don't even play in the fourth quarter. So we get to see more competitive games, which is going to translate into just more fantasy stats for everybody, as well as more watchable basketball. And so I think that's really my hope, is like, let's come. I want to see some competitive Pistons basketball this year.
I appreciate this one, and as somebody who just has too many injured players to even fit Jalen Duren in an injury spot, I've just been eating games. I will at least give the Pistons credit that with Duren's ankle sprain, they did put out a timetable of 2 weeks, and that they did update that timetable. So I'm eating those games, but at least with a little bit of information. He was ruled out today, but they made him doubtful for the game today, Saturday. So I think his return is. It is, but it's not as egregious as the Hornets. So I just want to take this opportunity to just point out how atrocious the Hornets are again by contrasting the Pistons' handling of Jalen Duren. At least there's been some information, so I appreciate that. But no, I can't wait to see him back out there. He is an animal.
Yeah. Let's Godspeed to the Pistons. They need all of our karmic help.
Let's keep burning through, Natron. So this fantasy hoopsmas, I wish the Pistons would just commit to Asar Thompson as a 30+ minute a night starter every night, for Christ's sake. And I say Christ's sake, knowing that, it's almost Christmas. And
this timing, yeah.
So literally, what else are you doing if you're the Pistons? You've lost 26 straight games and counting. He's been a crowd favorite in the home games, just watching some footage, like they go crazy for that guy. I haven't watched a lot of whole Pistons games, I'll be honest, but just looking at some of the burning through kind of, the condensed games, just doing some research for this. They go crazy for that guy. So give the fans something to enjoy and to track his progress. And it's funny because the day that we were recording here, the 23rd of December, he did play 31 minutes and he started. So can we sustain that? Is this going to be a trend, or is it just random? Because they've been very inconsistent with how they've handled him, yanking him in and out of the starting lineup. So during their 25th straight loss to the Jazz, Bogdanovich is 34 years old, Marvin Bagley, who's horrible, and Beef Stew, who's shout out UW, but he's mid. They all played over 30 minutes as starters, while their prized 5th overall pick in this past draft played 19 minutes off the bench. He still got you 2 blocks and a steal. So
yeah, I watched that game actually.
Did you? Wow.
Cool. Yeah, I had some bets on it because the Pistons were favored in that game, and I was like, I'm sorry. I have to bet on the Jazz on this one. And so then of course I had to watch it. So they were up, and they just looked at this panic looked in their eye, like, what do we do at this point?
So as somebody who's rostered this guy, I've never considered dropping him. He is the poster child of the "you will regret this." Like, if the Pistons smarten up and commit to giving him steady minutes, as they did to start the season. But it's been rough, especially nursing all these injuries I've had on our League of Record roster. It's been tough just eating this inconsistent playing time, and it's been wild. So let's get into it a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So the minutes, they went from the in October and November, they condensed those 2 months. He played 29 minutes a game, and then in December it drops to 22 minutes a game. So I take offense to a 34-year-old Bogdanovich being a reason to drastically impact the development and opportunities of a rookie who's started as well and as hot as Azor Thompson did. So, I don't get it. We need to fix it. The stats are what they are. I won't read them to you, but obviously they dropped drastically in the month of December. So, you don't need to showcase Bogdanovich. People know they probably won't even trade him. They're so inept. So they're going to keep him. They're just going to keep him, and they're going to, but yeah. I don't know. What say you on this?
I'm glad that we're talking about this because I have been curious. So he's at this point he's 66% rostered across Yahoo leagues, and I have been wondering because he obviously started so hot, especially on the defensive end. I mean, his steals and blocks were absolutely ludicrous. I mean, he was just like he was a terror on that end of the floor and really a bright spot for their team. And you've been seeing these, like as you mentioned, these giant peaks and valleys. And so I have been wondering, I was wondering during that hot streak, it's like, is this real? Are we just seeing, we're just planning on seeing a Miles Turner or a Thibault, type guy out there who's just clearly has a magnet for the ball? Or is this just like a kind of a lucky streak that he was running on? And so I've been wondering, I've been really curious to see what the overall fantasy reaction was going to be during this downturn, and see if people were going to be dropping him when he has 2, 3, 4 games bad in a row, because it is tough because he doesn't give you much when he doesn't give you defense. I mean, and that's the hard part about rostering defensive specialists is that
totally look at the drop off that Herb Jones have had since we talked about him last.
Yeah, I mean, when they don't give you those blocks and steals, they're piss poor. So it is tough. I hope that I'm 100% agreement. I hope this Christmas we see a lot more Ausar Thompson minutes. Like, geez, why not?
It's literally why not? There's no reason. I will say
power forward. Who cares?
That's what I'm saying. I think he'd be great at power forward. Exactly. Like, just figure it out. Why are you playing Marvin Bagley over him? That makes no sense. I don't care.
Right. Play Bogdanovich, get the spacing, but
sure.
Play him go a little small.
It's insane. It's actually
not working whatever you're doing.
It's not at all. I will say, just fantasy perspective, looking back on it, it turns out that Thompson was sell high. I actually got some offers in our league that were looking back at it, I'd smash, I'd take them. But it was just such a shock to see this guy come out like that I was like, I got to see what this turns into. There wasn't enough data to make an assessment on if he was a sell high. So I held. True. And so I think sometimes that's all you could do. But of course, with maybe looking back on it, a team like the Pistons or the Hornets, depending on who's on the front of the jersey and the way the franchise is handling it, that should be a factor in deciding if someone's a sell high. Because even someone like Mark Williams, like just the way that Hornets handle things, maybe it could behoove you to move those guys if you get a crazy offer. Because I did get some crazy offers for Ausar Thompson.
Oh, that's an interesting thought pattern in there. I kind of like the way you're rationalizing that.
I try to be rational, so
that's good. Yeah.
What do you got left?
Well, the next thing on my Christmas wish list is some better coffee in the morning. To be honest with you, like there's nothing you don't want to wake up Christmas morning and be drinking some like shithouse Folgers or like
shithouse Folgers.
Like just some like whatever local Starbucks. Like, come on, like bring me the good stuff. And so like that's where I'm really excited about Steelbridge Coffee. So head over to steelbridgecoffee.com/PTJ. Pick up some locally roasted, fair trade, organic, really sustainably roasted coffee that honestly tastes awesome. This batch that I got for Christmas is one of the best batches I've ever had. I was just commenting on it. I drank it even cold. I came home, I was like a little tired at like 4:00 and poured like just a little like glass of like cold coffee. And I was like, it honestly tasted like a mocha. It was amazing. So the quality's great. But check out steelbridgecoffee.com/PTJ and pick up some like sweet basketball cards while you're at it, and treat your family. Don't give your family bad coffee. They're too important to you.
Maybe like your in-laws who might want to. I mean, there's somebody in
That's true.
We just watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and some of those people deserve bad coffee.
Yeah, fair point. You want to have a different coffee for
differentiate
who your guest is. That's a good point.
You really should.
So my wish here for this Christmas is I'm hoping that I'm going to implore the Spurs to please trade for a competent point guard this year.
You don't love Point Sohan experiment? That wasn't for you.
I like it. I like what they were
Right.
trying with that.
It was worth trying. It was worth trying, but yeah.
Yeah, I think for development, I mean, they were,
Yeah.
they're going the opposite of their neighbor, the Rockets, in that they were clearly prioritizing development. But I think at this point, I think that you can get somebody in there that's not, that's not a foundational player, but you can just be a table setter, because I think it's hurting the rest of their team as far as fantasy numbers go. If they could just get
Tyus Jones instead of Trey.
There you go. Swap bros.
Bro swap in a second. There's no reason for the Spurs to be as bad,
right?
I'm sure it is. We'll edit that part out. Broswap.com /PTJ. No,
they're not a sponsor.
No, they're not. No, it's there's no reason for the Spurs to be as bad as they've been. And you really got to start when you examine it and you say, okay, like, why is that? Like, I think public enemy number one is there's not a table setter on this team.
Yeah. And in one hand, you got to applaud them for going fully development and knowing that their winning roster is 4 years from now, and to not shortchange themselves. But really, I think you can do both. And I think if they just had a middle of the road point guard in there, I think first off, I mean, just as a fan, it would increase the watchability of the team.
Yeah.
And second off, you'd give you would reward Sohan for those like awesome cuts that he does. He's a great cutter.
For sure.
You kind of hook him up with those. You'd kind of give your boy, I know that you're huge on this guy, Devin Vassell, with a couple more open shots. He's a good shooter.
Yep.
I don't think I'm not quite as high on him as you are, but
Paul George Light, baby.
Yeah, I think that's
super light,
underlined and bold. Yeah, super lights. Yeah, super lights.
Like crystal light instead of drinking drinking Puree. Imagine just drinking from a piece of fruit and then drinking Crystal Light.
And then you drink half the Crystal Light down and then you fill it with water.
No, it's full. It's a regular glass, as prescribed.
But really, I think what would be sweet for their watchability alone would be just getting some more of those Wembanyama like alley oops, because that's how the season started. Is that they throw it up to him, nobody can get to that level.
Straight up,
he can dunk it, and then teams kind of have been able to take that away because nobody's been able to kind of set him up for those shots. So I would love to see more of those. But then really also like I think it's interesting with the Spurs, and it kind of got me into another like little micro segue, was that I feel like the Spurs might be number one on the they're playing and there's just nobody streamable on their team. And so the quick little sidebar, I was like trying to think, like, is there a least streamable or a team that's like less streamable than they are? Because they like their bench is just not really anything. And so I think if they got that competent point guard in there, you'd get a little bit more of some of these like Malcolm Brandons or like some of these guys that could pop occasionally if they just were rewarded with some easier looks.
I was going to say, like, there are some teams where Malachi Branham would actually be the best streaming option. I'm just trying to think, because when the schedule shakes out a certain way and you go to check out a team and like, you're like, man, there's really nothing here. The Cavs, until this Porter Jr. kid has produced himself, have been really rough.
Yeah, true. That's a really strong one. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and I don't know why they have to jerk around my boy Crunch Time Collins. I thought he was supposed to start. Like, what are we doing? I don't get it. Just seems random. Like, he's played really well.
And he hasn't got hurt, which is actually crazy. That part is crazy. Like,
I know.
I knew he wasn't going to be good, and we had an argument over that, but I didn't expect him to just not play. Like,
I didn't know that the Blazers fans had such a vendetta against Zach Collins. I guess it's just not taking Donovan Mitchell when taking Collins over him. I guess. I mean, at time that would have been a weird fit, but just the value. What is that about Blazers fans in crunch time? Because he couldn't stay on the floor. It was just frustrating to constantly be sold this crap every preseason, and then just like he never played.
Yeah, and I think
he's talented. He's talented, man.
He's talented, and I think it came on the heels of Myers Leonard, like them like they were extraordinarily patient with Myers Leonard. They kind of gave him a second contract, and then it was followed up by, okay, like Myers Leonard's no good, but trust us, Collins is the guy. And so I think people kind of like are putting some of their animosity for Myers Leonard into Zach Collins.
Stuff happens, like it's in the DNA of fans to kind of like connect dots and think about things they've been through before. It's interesting. Yeah, there's an emotional intelligence to a fan base, but sometimes it's not so intelligent because Crunch Time Collins is the truth. He has an incredible fantasy skill set. He just can do a little bit of anything and everything. He can do it all.
With the proper minutes, he was doing really well this season. I do gotta give him that.
He was. All right. Well, that's all I got. You got anything else?
I got one more here, and this is one that I kind of figured that we could kind of popcorn back and forth a little bit on, and kind of throw out some names. And it was just kind of one of these things, and maybe it was a little bit informed because I had, I'm currently having one of these weeks where I was within striking distance of a number of categories. I lost this week in our joint league, but I was within striking distance of 4 or 5 categories, and so was thinking about guys that we've all been in this position where on a Sunday you pick up somebody hoping for a miracle, if you get the best outcome of this player, they can turn a week around for you. And so my Christmas wish is I want continued success for fantasy boom bust streamers. And so guys that can like single-handedly turn 2 or 3 categories for you, either one way or the other, and so
this is inspired work.
I figured I was just going to highlight a couple guys, and I'm sure you have a couple guys too that you have, and I think everybody has like those guys that you're like, it's a break in case of emergency type pickup.
Yes.
And so I'm just going to start throwing out guys and as soon as you think of somebody to like chime on in, but I figure I'm going to start with the guy who I think is perhaps the MVP this season of this category, and that is one Tim Hardaway Jr.
Always.
Yeah, he's the classic like hold your nose, pick him up on a Sunday, drop him on a Monday type of guy.
Like if you need to lose field goal percentage that week and you're in a bind, grab Tim Hardaway Jr.
Yeah, right. but he's getting up 14 shots a game. 14 shots a game. That's crazy. And so I mean, like you pick him up, you have a decent chance that he scores 25 points with four threes, but you have an equally decent chance that he goes 3 for 17 and just crushes your team.
It's insane how real it is. Like it's just like he can just not have a mid game. He's like the opposite of DeAndre Hunter.
Yes, right. Yeah, the swings are violent. So like it's just whiplash. So violent. Yeah. The other one, we already talked about Dylan Brooks, but I'm just gonna bring him up again. He actually has been a solid points and threes streamer, but we've all seen enough 1 for 16 games out of him to make you nervous. So I feel like he fit this kind of theme on this one.
So I have to ask you now. So are you putting him more in the like stream, like break glass in case of emergency, instead of last time we talked about him saying that he was a must roster player?
Oh yeah, I think I've always.
And we got to stay water as fantasy analysts.
I am like a little tongue in cheek fan of Dylan Brooks, and just to be fully transparent. But I do think this season he actually has been a really good threes and points streamer. But I think, but there's risk there when you pick him up. The next guy is we haven't mentioned him. I don't think we mentioned him last podcast, which is a shame on us. But is Kelly Oubre Jr. Like my Christmas wish this year is please return to the 30-minute a night player that we saw pre hit and run. Since he's come back, he hasn't had a single game that's been above 25 minutes. So, but he's been a pretty classic, could go crazy one way or the other type of
Well,
guy.
and D'Anthony Melton just went down. I'm just checking to see if there's an update on that. But I mean, maybe that's his window to
Oh,
get in.
really? Oh, I didn't even see that.
I was a full participant in practice, but yeah, he had a thigh contusion. But yeah, he just needs a little window. He didn't play against the Raptors yesterday, Melton. But yeah, he just needs a little window to sneak back on that rotation and get cooking.
Yeah.
But you got to let the Tsunami Poppy cook for the holidays.
Come on, yeah. I mean, like, Jesus. Plus, I feel like shame that we hadn't brought him up in a couple as much as we should have been.
It's not contractually obligated either.
Yeah. The next two guys, and I'm sorry, I don't want to grandstand here if you got somebody here, but is basically there was so James was in our joint league, like, did the swap of these two players, which I thought was pretty ironic, but is Scoot Henderson and Russell Westbrook, because I feel like they both fit this category really well, of just like they could put it together and score and land you one of these 27-7 games, or they could just crush you, single-handedly lose you 4 categories.
You know, has to be mentioned here as very similar to what you're describing is Benedict Mathurin. That guy's having these huge spike games, and there's really no rhyme or reason for when they're happening. It's not a clear thing where like, okay, this guy's out of the lineup, this is when you grab him. He's just a chucker, and some days he gets yanked for it, and some days when he has the shot, they let him stay out there, and he'll get you 32 points and 5 threes and a trinkle of other stats. So he's becoming
right, and go like 9 for 9 from the line. I mean, exactly. I feel like that's a lot of it.
Good call on the free throws. Yeah, he gets those high volume free throw games. So yeah, it's tough to keep him rostered in your average size league because the lows are low and they're frequent. But yeah, he's one of these guys too. Another guy who's actually been cooking in this way that you could easily get 5 points. I'm looking at it right now. Is Dante DiVincenzo. For some reason, he's throwing up like he had a 5-3, 23.8 rebound game the other day. And then he had 11, 2, and 2 the next day. He had 18 points the other day. 21 so it goes 21, 5, 18, 8, 23, 11. So DiVincenzo in his mid-20s minutes role right now is a guy where you can pick up and you can get yourself 5 threes and 20-something points. And he's available everywhere. He is 14% rostered in Yahoo.
I mean, even quickly, he's got to be sub 50, I'm guessing, at this point too.
Get quickly over on the Spurs. Free quickly.
Yeah, you're right. He'd be a perfect table setter there.
He's a good table setter.
I do love that. Let's make that trade happen. If they're not going to do it,
we'll do it.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, he's 53% rostered, but yeah. The Knicks roster in general, there's a lot of Hart kind of falls in that category too, where he could be a great rebound pickup for you, or he could just play 12 minutes.
Also, with Jericho Sims going down, make sure to check your waiver wire for Taj Gibson because he's back on the Knicks. No, obviously Hartenstein's the pickup there, but I thought it was just funny that Tibbs couldn't help himself to have the token starter be Jericho Sims. Just couldn't do it.
He can't help himself.
So not only does he bring back Taj Gibson before Sims goes down, I think he's out 8 to 12 weeks. He was starting Jericho Sims as a token starter over Hartenstein when Sims wasn't playing prior at all. He was like not in the rotation. What is that?
It is the strangest thing, and I know Josh Lloyd is big on this. Like that's like one of his biggest pet peeves is when your backup guy doesn't just automatically become the starter. I think it makes sense when your backup guy is a microwave scorer. Like if your backup guy is Jordan Clarkson, it's like, yeah, don't start him. Like he's there to run the backup unit. But when your backup guy is not, it doesn't make any sense.
By the way, I've decided we talk a lot about Cole Anthony and what is he? I think because I overuse Nick Van Exel as a comp. I love Nick Van Exel as a microwave scorer, but I think it's Jordan Clarkson. I think that's the roadmap for Cole Anthony.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, kind of and there's a role for that. Karis LeVert would also fit that category too, and I think there's every team needs a guy that can come off the bench on a particular night, get hot and score.
Word, love it when guys get hot. I'm just curious as somebody who doesn't have kids.
Is that your fantasy wish list for the Christmas?
I'm just curious as someone just to pivot into the holiday season. What's something that's like a 5 to 7 year old girl wants for the holidays these days? Like what's on the wish list for you for Daddy Litke?
Oh yeah, we we have quite a few presents. Last year it was all stuff that I had to build, so I was like just
Okay.
doing like straight like Santa's workshop like till like 2 a.m. every night for
Did you-
like a few days.
Did you wear that when you were working? The
I probably
antlers?
should have been like, yeah, I was more drinking Keystone, but the you know, it's just a lot of our kids are very girly, so it's a lot of frozen stuff and
Are they?
and whatnot. But it's fun. It's really a fun time, you know, with a couple kids. You know, kind of gives you a lot of stuff to look forward to for that next year. They're super excited.
You play Santa Claus? Santa, like, hey,
What do you mean?
do you dress up as Santa Claus and pretend you're Santa Claus? Like in the morning?
No, I'm I don't. No, I don't. I don't have the beard for it. I can't grow a great beard, and I probably ought to just like buy a beard, do like a weave, I guess, or something.
Yes.
I do have a nice beard, but I don't know if I could do the weave.
I mean, it's prevalent. I don't know if it's nice. Like, it's coming every which way at this
Prevalent.
point. It's prevalent. Okay, well, I think Litke and I are ready to get to the holiday festivities here. So this has been our fantasy wish list / gripes episode. Please make sure you're following us on Twitter, Projecting the Jump Podcast, and Flyin J on Twitter as well. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors, and welcome on board Winslow Guitars. Shout out Ryan Winslow Meyer for sure. And yeah, just enjoy Christmas, stay safe. Good luck to all my fantasy football homies who have just grinded this podcast this week in the semis and in the best ball semis. Shout out to my underdog homies as well. But yeah, it's a fun time to be a fantasy man and to be a family man.
Yeah, we appreciate everybody that's listened, and wish everybody some happy holidays out there.
I think it couldn't be said better than that. Now listen, for a Natron claim, this is your boy Flyin J. Happy holidays to you. We will talk to you early in the year 2024. Peace.
Later.